This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today we're going to review the penultimate episode of Lower Decks called Fissure Quest. And we're going to play the great interview I did with Garrett Wang. Oh, wait.
I did.
Yeah.
We did.
You did. I wasn't even in town.
You helped with the question. That's why we always mix up like who did these interviews, because we actually prepare for them together, and so it almost doesn't matter who did the interview, right? Right.
Although I do think you did most of the work on this one because I was off cavorting with my family.
Fair enough.
Anyway, before we get to all that, the only news we have today is a deep dive look at the Section 31 trailer, which came out last week. Was it last week or this week?
Well, no, it was over the weekend. It was after our last podcast. Our last podcast, I thought maybe they'll wait until next week. I knew there was another trailer coming, but I forgot about the convention in Brazil.
And they've released big stuff there before.
Well, last year they brought Sonequa. There was a big, there were panels there. This year, the reason why it wasn't on the radar is because there was no mention. They didn't bring anyone from Star Trek. There was no panel, but Paramount Plus released a bunch of things, like a Dexter thing and a whole bunch of things there, just because it was a thing to do, I guess. So it was a surprise on Saturday, and I have to say this is a much better trailer than the first one.
Yes,
it's a more normal trailer. I'm still not sure they're getting what they want out of this, which is it's going to be as cool as Guardians of the Galaxy, and because that really is dependent on like if we like the characters or not. But it looks good. Like it looks well made. It looks expensive. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of costumes. There's a lot of location shooting and sets. The nightclub, which is kind of a major part of this. Giorgio's running a nightclub in the early 24th century. We see a lot of that. And so, it's not like they didn't just cheap out and redress a couple of Discovery sets. I mean, even though they did some of that as well, you can't really tell.
They definitely didn't cheap out.
No.
Yeah. Whatever I think of the idea of it, it's definitely well produced and well, filmed well and gorgeous sets and lots of effort and money.
And in the breakdown, we're because we've been getting little bits of stuff, and now you're kind of able to put some of the stuff we've heard from the actors and the director or the marketing stuff to pictures. Like, oh, okay, now we know what this is and what that is. And so if you go into the trailer analysis, there's a lot of details there that, if you want to kind of pre-spoiler yourself, it's not too many spoilers. I'm starting to get the sense that the mission that they go and Section 31 comes and gets her. She's running this nightclub. She's, kind of out of the game, as it were, but they need her for something. So I think whatever it is, it's something to do with the mirror universe.
Yes, that would make sense.
We see some young Giorgio. So the mirror universe stuff is used in flashback, but I think there's some like device or some kind of MacGuffin from the mirror universe that maybe has worked its way into, the regular universe and is threatening the galaxy and is going to kill everyone. So that brings her on board to help.
Right. It sort of logically explains why they would go get her.
Right. Like, because otherwise she's just, some random evil person running a nightclub.
Which, can be useful on occasion.
It looks like we're going to get some cool new technology and gadgets, which you want with the spy thing. So I'm more, after watching this, I'm more looking forward to plocking down my $0 next month and watching the movie. And it is just next month, late next month on the 24th of January.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still not excited about it. I'll be honest. I'm going to watch it and I'm not going to pre-hate it, but it's not,
that's good.
It's not my genre. Like, I don't want spy. I don't really watch spy stuff. I'm not that interested in spy stuff. So I'm not a James Bond gal, for example. So we'll see. I mean, it's funny that they chose to put in one of the let that be your last battlefield guy, or rather, like a member of their species. Yeah,
and we could get into like how is one still alive in the 4th century.
And why is his hair also split color-wise?
But we know so little about them. It's like, it's not worth getting worked up over. It was obviously just a Easter egg. This is not a main character. He does have a line. I guess he works for her at the nightclub or something. The only character I'm getting a sense of, I like the Quasi character, which is the Sam Richardson character. I get the sense that I'm going to like him, maybe just because I really like the actor.
Yeah, it helps that, I love Ted Lasso. I love him. So that makes him seem like he's going to be more fun. And if, you know what, because I interviewed some of the people, I already like them. When you interview the actors and they're nice, then it makes you like their characters more.
I mean, I think one of the issues is if you want this thing to be funny, the main guy in the movie who's putting the Section 31 team is a good actor, but he's a very serious guy. And it seems like he's a very serious character. And so you don't have the kind of Quinn fun Guardians of the Galaxy character, or an actor like
Chris Pratt.
Exactly. So the Quasi character is kind of the fun character, and I think some of the other characters are supposed to be fun as well. So they're kind of carrying that load to make this fun, and we'll see if they could pull that off, because that's very difficult to do. Because obviously Georgiou's also kind of, although she's good for a quip here, everyone.
She does have good quips, but we'll see. I mean, they did when I talked to them, they did keep saying that it was fun.
Exactly, and that there's a lot of humor in it, and so that hasn't come across yet. And but I think that's going to be critical to this thing working, for me at least.
Yeah, and 100% for me, since all the action stuff is not the kind of thing I love. I'm so interested in characters and dialogue, and not just smashing around and jumping around and leaping around.
Exactly. So, but again, no pre-hating, and there's some pretty cool stuff. Like, you could see the cameloid transformation visual effect looks really cool, because we see Quasi turn into Georgiou at one point for some reason. It's going to be a visual feast. It's not just a 2-part episode of Discovery. It's bigger than that, as it were.
And I will say that reading your breakdown was very helpful for me. I understood a lot more about what was going on.
Yeah, because they throw a lot at you at the tribe. I mean, it's just like, some things last for 2 frames, and it could be a bit much. One thing is it's rated PG-13, which isn't a surprise because it is a movie. And technically they could do a limited theatrical release. And I know that there was some talk of doing that, but I'm not sure there is. But, they could have gone harder with this, but PG-13 seems to be the right move, as it were.
Yep.
And that's all there is to it. I mean, fan reactions, I think overall, certainly old school fans, there's reluctance, there's concern, there's some outright, I'm not going to like this.
And I don't think that's who they made it for.
Exactly.
So, and they're smartly capitalizing on Michelle Yeoh. And she is an action star, and she's very popular right now. And that's what they should be leaning into if they're trying to pull in new people.
Right. So, speaking of trying to please the fans, let's switch to some Lower Decks.
Some Fissure, the Fissure Quest.
Yes, exactly. The first part of a 2-parter. So the season finale is one big giant episode. This is a very long episode it's the 3rd longest of the series. And I bet the finale itself is going to be the longest. So,
yeah, I think so too. This is a great first part of a 2-parter because it does have its own beginning, middle, and end.
Absolutely.
And then cliffhanger. It's very, very well done.
Yeah. I mean, I loved it. I think it was a fantastic episode. I mean, there's just so much that they
really packed it in.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like last week we were talking about, did they have a collection of B, C, and D stories that were, on the wall of the writer's room at
let's do it.
Let's do them all at once, with our secondary characters. And this kind of, there's an element here of like, well, let's get as many, of these legacy people. We know he's always wanted to do an Enterprise character, and the multiverse thing, which they set up early on in the season, allowed them to do that. But boy, they really went for it. And I mean, the downside is we had the great episode with Brent Spiner, right? But he got to really have an arc and do stuff, even though he was just ahead. Here, how many do we got? We've got Alfred Woodard, Andy Robinson, Alexander Siddig. Yeah, and of course, Garrett Wang.
Yeah.
I hate to say it's like, is that too much to throw at us in one episode?
I don't think it's too much. I think they did a really nice job with it, and they didn't take away from I thought the episode had a good story. It had a nice, strong story. There was a good message in there, or maybe more of a theme, which has to do with, I think, friendship and how it can transcend multiverses. And then they just sprinkled in all of these people, and they did really smart things with them. Like T'Pol has grown and changed, and she understands humans now because she's been married to Trip Tucker for many years.
Well, we should stipulate none of these characters are the prime characters.
Right. Yes.
They're all versions of. With the most, Curzon Dax.
No, and Bashir is actually a hologram.
Right. He mentions the original Bashir, so I guess he died or something happened to him or who knows what. They're all from different universes. The only prime universe character in this, except for the bookend, is William Boimler, who we last saw in season 3. And that's, in a way, though, like season 4 has been so much about character growth, and our characters play almost no role in this episode. It's almost like yesterday's Enterprise, where you go, that's a really great episode. And then you realize like none of those people are our people, that it's like Picard's cool in it, but he's not our Picard.
Right.
Part of me was wondering, like, what if they had one of our people somehow on the ship? Like they had an alternate Mariner instead of our Mariner, for example. Would that have made it better to have the quote unquote real Mariner on board as opposed to
I wouldn't have. For me, I liked what they explored with Mariner. I liked what they did with William Boimler, who's now he's bored and he's just he's just kind of fed up and tired and everything, and Mariner is more timid, but she's more focused and she's into engineering, and I just think it was a great way. It's exactly what Alfred Woodard, what Lily Sloan said, which is it's a way of looking at ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. Which is what Mirror Mirror, which is the first Star Trek multiverse story.
The Mirror Universe was supposed to be about looking at yourself.
Yeah. And they certainly set that off in the first episode of the season when they introduced the multiverse concept. And because I thought they were possibly going to go there where the bad guy of the season was going to be William Boimler in Section 31, because they set that up in season 3 when they faked his death.
People have been speculating about that for a long time.
And as it turned out, there was no bad guy, although a bad guy grew, came to be during the episode. But the real, it was all a misunderstanding because Lily Sloan wasn't doing her calculations right.
Right.
I was thinking about your interview with Mike McMahon you did right before the season started, and Boimler's kind of the way his jaded view of the multiverse seems to be channeling Mike's jaded view of hacky multiverse storytelling, and Boimler talking about reverse Picard and,
human Worf.
Right? And Neelix with a crew cut, whatever, that multiverse has been overdone. And yet they made it the backbone of the season, but he hung a lantern on it, or they were aware of what they were doing. But I thought it was, but Lily, as you said, was very important there in turning that around to say, no, there is a value to this, as you said.
Right. And also, just like she did in First Contact, she's giving someone who's very set in their perspective a different way to look at things.
Yeah. So he ends up having a bit of an arc. The William Boimler, in the end, when he he relies on Tendi and Rutherford and, well, his Mariner, and I guess to an extent his counterpart Boimler, although
he didn't handle it so well.
No, he did not. Now, how did William Boimler become a captain so fast? You know, there are questions that I don't know if they're going to bother answering.
I mean, Section 31 did that, right? Like, he was recruited by Section 31, and that's presumably who set him up. So
right, but he was a lieutenant. This is only like a year and a half, 2 years later. My bigger question is, where is his original crew? Right, because presumably all of these random Kims and other multiverse people are refugees he's picked up along the way. He picked up 2 in the first 3 minutes of the episode. But when he was set out on his mission to find the culprits behind the multiverse, presumably his ship had a crew, right?
You would think.
So where are they? Is something bad happened, is what they're, you know, the implication, although it was never mentioned, but he had to replace them with Kims and the like.
Right. Keep track of that question and we will ask. It's a good one to ask when we do talk to Mike.
Yes. Mike we'll be talking to Mike next week.
Nice.
So, and if anyone has any burning Mike questions, put them in the comments of this article and, you know, hopefully we can get them in there as well. But, you know, these, I mean, these kind of secondary questions that I have on my second or third one. The first time I watched this, it's almost like I had my mouth agape, like, oh my God, it's DePaul. Oh my God, it's Lily. Oh my God.
I almost needed a nap afterwards. It was like so much. And of course, like Garrick and Hologram Bashir were so funny and so good. And such a payoff for all these years of fans talking about their feelings for each other and the 2 actors admitting that they played it that way and the whole thing. And then finally we got it in all its glory.
Indeed. I loved how they, you know, the Garrick was kind of pushing to have these arguments through the whole thing, but it was just
fun.
Yeah, just because they're fun. But and that's the thing of they needed the extra time of this episode because otherwise, it would have just been a bunch of cameos, but they let these characters have tiny moments here and there so that they became characters on their own, not just because these are alternate versions and, you know, they have different lives, they have different races.
Yes, they definitely have different races.
Another example is the Curzon and T'Pol relationship I thought was fascinating.
I thought it was great and did reveal something about the Prime Universe version of each character. Like Curzon, who we always knew was kind of this rascally dude, the idea that he is a rabble-rouser so that the symbiont can have the experience is a great take.
Although, you know, it's kind of an excuse for him to, you know, drink and
eat
whatever he wants. But sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's that too. It can be both things.
But, you know, they killed a character. I mean, like there's so much going on. They killed him, you know, in the episode, although not the Dax symbiote, because now, and I have a feeling there's going to be more to this because T'Pol absorbed the Katra of Dax, which is there's a whole lot going on there, right?
There's a lot there, but there's still no physical symbiont if she doesn't take it. So I kept wondering if somehow Jadzia is going to turn up. Maybe.
Who knows how that works? Because you have to transfer the Katra back. So do they end up with a blank? You know, because Search for Spock, they had a kind of handy spare Spock, right? So,
right.
You know, how do they end up with an extra Dax? But it is the multiverse, so things are possible in that vein, as it were.
Listen, Ezri could turn up. Jadzia could turn up. Who knows?
Indeed.
But I like T'Pol. This is not a character that I liked on Enterprise, and I really liked her in this. I thought she was great. I thought she was she had good quips and comments, and wasn't just there for people to stare at, which is not her fault, but that's a lot of what she did on Enterprise.
It's kind of, I mean, she's out of the game. She's retired. She's married. She has kids. I think she lives on an island. She married this super rich guy.
Super rich and does a lot of philanthropy. That's what she's very focused on these days.
Yeah. So this is the first time she's done any kind of Hollywood work in almost a decade. But it took something for them to talk her into this, I bet.
Yes, I can't wait to find out, because there has to be a story there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure with, Bashir and Garrick, you just call up the actors and go, hey, we have this story where you're together. And they both went, yes.
I'm wondering also if there was any pushback from the powers that be. They're like, oh, you're going to turn a couple of our major characters gay. Okay, that's kind of a thing, right?
I bet there was not any pushback. I'm going to guess there was nothing. One, because if you want to get technical, they're alternate versions and one's a hologram. But two, because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, certainly in this day and age.
It's not a thing.
Back into Paul's day, Rick Berman would have never let this happen.
Nope, he would not.
I bet Alex didn't blink an eye. I bet he thought it was cool.
I'm sure he did.
He's like, make him even gayer.
Yeah. They were very funny.
But also, Garrick was still Garrick. I did like you have to listen closely. There's little things happening in the background, like they're walking by and he goes, in some universes, I'm a tailor.
Yeah.
But he still, obviously, there's still a little Obsidian order in this.
And sneaking up behind people instead of attacking them from the front.
Yeah.
We should talk about the Kims. We haven't talked about the Kims.
No, and that's, I mean, again, another question is, why is the multiverse so populated with Kims, is a question, right?
And it's kind of a play, I think, on how, in Voyager, he was replaced by a multiverse version of himself. The prime version of Harry Kim is not the prime version.
That is true. It's also true of
Naomi Wildman.
O'Brien as well.
And Naomi Wildman, who was swapped also. So I think it started with that. And then I loved all the Kims being so joyful when a new one came. They were so happy. And they seemed really generally pretty adjusted until 2-Pip Kim showed up. And then he was so upset that he was the only 2-Pip Kim. It made him crazy.
Right, because you would think it would be the other way around, where he showed up and they're all lieutenants, but he's still an ensign, and that pushes him over the edge.
Yeah, great twist, having it be the other way.
Although we still haven't seen canon prime Kim, and we don't know if he's ever been promoted. You wonder, because since they decided that Lily's not the bad guy, it was all an accident, he became the bad guy, at least for a little while. And I would have liked a little, why did he suddenly go bad so fast? It was funny, but I was thinking of of parallels and crazy Riker in the universe where the Borg have taken over. You get why he's the way he is.
Yeah,
right?
haggard, desperate Riker.
Yeah. So why is this Kim? Because he wanted to take them all back to his universe. His universe sounds nice. So I don't know.
I mean, my theory on it, my headcanon on it, although it is rooted in what was there, is that he really was just so freaked out by the fact that none of them had been promoted. That it really was a reaction to that he was like, I'm going to have to do something here because, And then they turned against him.
Right. I mean, right away. So it was clear that, they said he tricked them, and he was nice to beam them all back before he went full villain. He had a villain laugh and everything.
Yes.
And then he died. What did he say? Because they're like, your ship is going to blow up if you do this. And he's like, I don't need your engineering nonsense. I've got 2 pips, so.
And then boom.
And I do agree, speaking of engineering, it was nice to see that within every Mariner, there is this smart, capable person,
who doesn't like risky things.
Yeah.
Or stupid bug planets.
Well, none of them like bug planets, I guess.
Well, the waiting. She was tired of the waiting.
Exactly.
I will say one of my favorite lines in the whole episode came from Curzon. When he looks at Bashir and Garrick and he says, lovers never fall out of the rifts for Curzon.
he had his own issues, obviously.
And let me ask you this. So at the very beginning, when we see our lower deckers together, Rutherford's Oculus is shooting plasma and it's not connecting to the Cerritos. So that is going to be something.
I did pick up on that there seems to be a problem with the ship, or, but we now know that there is no big bad, but maybe there are some multiverse baddies in the Prime universe that snuck through a rift or something like that.
Yeah, something else is going on.
They've definitely set up a great finale. There's they've got to stop I didn't fully understand what was happening, but basically the whole universe was going to blow up, but they put all the bad energy in the Prime universe, and now they need to stop that.
Yes.
Whatever that means. There was a lot of technobabble in this episode, kind of over the top. They were having fun with it, how the Beagle, Lily ship, runs. And I was wondering, did they name it the Beagle after the famous ship of exploration from Darwin's, when he went to the Galapagos, right? That was the Beagle. Or was it just named for Porthos?
Could be.
And how old was Lily? Because she was in a 22nd, she's from the 21st century, but she was in 22nd century garb.
I still can't believe they got her. That was, I would never have thought that she'd come back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The first time I saw her, I'm like, oh, that's going to be an alt version of Captain Freeman.
Yeah.
And something to do with Starbase 80, because the uniforms. And then soon enough, you go, oh my God, I can't believe they got her.
Alfred Woodard.
Yeah,
oh my God.
They got another one.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't have warp drive, how do they have Vulcans on that ship? In there, but I guess she's been picking up refugees along the way on her multiverse.
Someone else invented warp drive.
Perhaps, yeah.
Just wasn't her.
And that's the thing. We're going to get more Lily, and we're going to get more of all of them except for Curzon, sadly. Although you're suggesting we're going to get some more Dax in the next episode.
I think it's possible. I feel like if someone with the symbiont dies, you're setting it up. And it would be so nice to have a non-dead Jadzia. Because we know our Jadzia is gone.
That's true. There's an empty station on the bridge, although they've got plenty of Kims, right? So they could,
Yeah, they have more than enough Kims to fill any position. Even if nobody really understands what ops is.
Exactly. It really was a complete episode, even though it ends on a cliffhanger.
And a very fitting penultimate episode for the series.
And the plot, as we were saying last week, the plot was thin to non-existent. It was silly. It was just an excuse to have their kind of all these fun little stories. But this is an interesting plot that they have that's running through this.
Yeah.
But they didn't need to do, I like how they set up this multiverse thing. They gave us just enough through the season, but they didn't overdo it. But there was enough to set this episode up, which was basically all multiverse all the time.
Right. It was one huge setup and yet still very entertaining in itself.
How do you think they're going to land this plane, as it were?
I'm not a guesser. You know me. That's not my thing. I don't want to sit and try and figure out how they're going to do it. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it. But what do you think?
Well,
because you are a guesser.
Mike said that it's a tearful finale. Now, they already killed off Curzon, but I think someone's going to, they've got extras, so we're going to see I think we're going to see some sacrifices in the finale. Maybe William Boimler.
Maybe poor Shax, who, despite the description, is not doing great, even though he died.
Yeah, he does seem to be out of sorts. I mean, that would be a big thing, to have some Prime people have to sacrifice themselves. And I think, as always, they like to have the Cerritos do something crazy, so we'll probably see them do something weird with the Cerritos in the finale. Because it has to save the multiverse, obviously.
Yes.
Or I guess just save the Prime universe, because all the other universes are fine, apparently.
Have been saved. It's just the Prime one.
Oh, yeah. And now they know how to get... Because at first I was like, are they lost? So I think the premise is that they didn't know how to get home. They were just kind of following fissures from universe to universe. But now with Lily on board, I think they now know how, and with Mariner, they now know how to get back to the Prime universe.
Right. They can return everyone to where they're supposed to be.
Bashir and Garrick can pick a universe to settle down in.
And then have fights about it that one of them likes and one of them doesn't.
But yeah, I mean, it was great. It was great. It was fantastic.
Super fun. Yeah.
It's everything you want it to be. It's fan servicey, but
in all the best ways.
Yeah. They've kind of, there's been a few moments of fan service getting overly meta, stuff like that in the last few episodes. And you could say they knew the end was coming and they don't care, because but it's not bad fan service.
No, it's great fan service. And honestly, the coup of getting Jolene was a big deal. Yeah.
And Alfred Wood, I mean, the phone call, and we're going to get into this with, it was not hard to get Garrett, like some of these calls were pretty easy, yes. But they had a challenge to really, and I would imagine, we heard that the finale went through a lot of rewrites. I bet you there was a version of this without her, and they had to, because they weren't sure they were going to get her. I bet that's the case. Curious what that was like. Was it
I want to know all the things that were considered and not done, and then exactly how things were changed when they were writing the season and then found out it was the last one.
For DS9 fans, I mean, there was a lot of, you got Curzon, Dax and Bashir and Garrick, so that's a lot of DS9 characters for this episode.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there was some TNG or other characters. They are part of the new, Star Trek universe, and I kind of want to see someone from that, Strange New Worlds or Discovery. Like
Discovery, they'd have to be, then you're adding time travel to either of those, which they did already, but
I guess, but I don't know. They could work it out. It'd just be nice to,
I would have, because we've never seen someone from Discovery animated like that. That would be fun.
Right. And they could get crazy, do a little Kelvin,
Well, there's one more episode to go, so let's see what happens.
Yeah. Chris Pine shows up. That'd be pretty funny.
I did feel like when William Boimler at the very beginning, he's disillusioned and he's bored because, the multiverses keep opening and it's this, same boring old thing. Completely reminded me of Kirk in Star Trek Beyond, where at the beginning, the jokey part was that he described his life as episodic. But I remember that he was disillusioned and kind of bored and felt like it was the same kind of thing over and over again. So there's a little Kelvin nod.
Yeah, I could see that now. I'm not sure if that's what they were going for, but certainly, like Kirk in that movie, he had an arc going from jaded to jazzed, as it were, and excited for the mission by the end. So, yeah.
The music, I felt, kind of backed that up. I don't know. It had that feeling for me.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I could see that. I think, I'm kind of, I'm ready for more. I can't wait to, I haven't seen it. Neither of us have seen it yet. They haven't given it to us yet, but I know that as soon as they send it to us on Friday, I'm going to watch it right away. I can't wait. I can't wait to see it.
I think it'll be great. I'm excited and sad at the same time.
Yes. There is a bittersweetness to all of this, obviously, knowing that there's so little left, but I'm really glad that Paramount, first they shepherded their resources. There's been a few bottle episodes this season. Mm-hmm. And, but they, because obviously a lot went into this episode and they had extra resources for this and presumably for the finale. So I'm glad that even though the show was canceled, they let them go out with the bang.
Yes. They didn't cut their budgets also.
No, indeed. All right. So I guess that's it for this episode, and it's time to get inside the episode and listen to my discussion with Garrett Wang.
Hey, Tony.
Hey, man.
So let's just jump into it.
Yeah.
So was getting the call from Lower Decks something you expected, and were you wondering why it took so long?
Yes and yes. I basically season one when it started, I was absolutely over the moon that a comedic trek had come out because I had been preaching that and thinking that ever since the end of Voyager that there needs to be a comedic trek. There has to be one soon. And when it came out, I was so excited, and seeing Tom Paris on season one, I thought was great. Season two went by, no call. Season three, and then we see Tom Paris again a second time, but as Nick Locarno. So Robbie's on there twice. That's when I messaged Mike McMahon, the showrunner, and I said, "It's awesome that you guys are paying some respect to Voyager by having Tom Paris, but please don't forget about Harry." Is what I said, and he responded back. He said, "Hey man, don't you worry. We talk about Harry in the writer's room daily." And then I knew they're trying to come up with something. They will come up with something. So at that point, I didn't worry any longer, and I was expecting it. And when they finally gave me the call, I was, more than ecstatic that it was actually going to be a go.
And so it sounds like you were familiar enough with the show that you understand why there were two Boimlers and
Yes.
all of it. You didn't really need a briefing at all to prepare for it, or how did you prepare to?
No, I didn't need a briefing at all. I'm a science fiction fan first and foremost. I think 10% of all series regulars on every single Star Trek show are actually sci-fi fans. The other 90% are actors doing a job. So I'm very proud to say that I'm part of that 10%. So I kind of keep my finger on the pulse of all Trek as it moves on, for sure.
Right, but there is something about doing a Lower Deck. Well, first of all, I assume none of these were Kim Prime, so you're playing different versions of yourself.
Correct.
And you're on an animated comedy, so it's a different character or characters.
Yeah.
So how did you, was Robbie helpful in that? Did you talk to anyone else, about?
When I got the call that I was definitely going to be doing it, and before I recorded the session, I reached out to both Tawny and Eugene, and I said, "Guys, I'm so excited! I'm going to be on the show with you." And they're like, "Oh, congrats!" And then I said, "Any advice? Any advice?" And both of them were like, "Bigger, faster." I'm like, okay. Like, it's in animation and especially Lower Decks, there's no time to draw out your sentences or speak like Kirk does. I mean, you can't have those pauses in there, right? So it's got to
Right.
It's got to be bop, 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 bop. And then with Robbie, I talked to Robbie about it. I was like, "How was your recording?" He said, "Well, one thing is, when I thought I was big enough, I was not big enough." Because during his session, they kept saying, "Bigger, Robbie, come on, bring it up, bigger, bigger." So he had to push himself, and he thought it was too big. So when I heard that from him, I knew, like, okay, there's no reins on this horse. You know what I'm saying? This horse is going to gallop at full speed, or whatever speed it wants to gallop or trot at or move at. So, yeah.
Well, your lieutenant is, I don't know how he was in the script. What was the kind of the baddie? Was he called Lieutenant Kim?
He was called Two Pip. Two Pip Kim.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he was very broad. He even got to do a villain laugh.
Yeah.
But did they give you any, like, why is he the way, because he kind of reminded me of, like, the crazy Riker in that one reality where he had to be like, what was driving him to be so angry?
They did not. Well, I mean, he's angry because he sees the treatment of all the other Harrys, that they have not been promoted. He can't believe it that they haven't been promoted. So he's mad and he's pissed off for them, really. But in terms of backstory or anything like that, no, they didn't say, like, okay, this Harry is this way because of that. Tall sock Harry is that way because of this, or the guy wearing the Harry wearing the drive uniform, he's that way because there was none of that talk beforehand. They just gave me the script and said, "Okay, here it is." I read.
How did they differentiate the other? Like, was it just Kim 1, Kim 2, or was it like Drive Kim?
They had descriptive names of exactly who they were. Like, okay, this is Tall Socks Kim or something, and this is Two Pip Kim. This is something Kim. So it was not with numbers; it was actually with some type of adjective.
Oh, okay, so it gave you something to work with.
Yeah, because if it was just 1, 2, 3, I would be so confused. I needed something to help anchor me.
But Kim Prime's nowhere in there, right?
No, correct. There's no Kim
Okay.
Prime. Yeah.
Anything you could tease for the Kims, because it's to be continued. So there's more Kims to come. Anything you can give us for the finale?
No, nothing. Sorry.
Well, but I mean, the obvious joke is about Kim being promoted, and technically, Kim has not yet been promoted.
Correct.
So did that, like, when you got this script, you're like, but you still haven't really promoted me, have you? Are you still
Tony? I was so overjoyed just to have the gig. I didn't even give a poop about. Hey, well, what about me? What about the Prime Kim? You're right. I should have asked. And now that you say that, I'm gonna talk to Mike. I'm gonna send a message a secondary follow-up message to him. Funny.
I remember, and I've talked to Terry about this. There was a little bit of drama about you with Picard season 3.
Yeah, I don't know what you learned from him, but I'm curious.
Well, I'm curious. Well, okay. Well, I mean, he had, like, the plan was Captain Kim was going to be the Admiral, what's her name? Like, that was going to be you.
Correct.
So how much did you know? How much got back to you? How far did it go? How did you feel about how
it went all the way to my manager said, you've been cast, and it was originally a 3-episode arc, which then changed to 2, then changed to 1. But I was told by my manager, you need to be in the LA area in January to go to a fitting. Sorry, not to a fitting. You need to be around. For a fitting, exactly. For a fitting, exactly. I'm thinking animated right now. For a fitting for Picard. So it was there. It had progressed fairly far into the actual, showing of Harry, or having Harry be on that show. Yeah, pretty darn far. Like, the script was written, Harry's name was in there.
Did you ever see it?
No, but Jerry Ryan said, like, oh, it was so funny, Gooby, because I saw we got sent a script, Harry was in there, and all of a sudden the revisions, Harry wasn't in there, and I was like, oh wow, so it went pretty darn far. And I'll be perfectly honest, being a sci-fi fan, I was depressed for months after that when it didn't happen. I was literally crying into my own sleeve.
Did you ever get any indications from Prodigy? Or
no?
Okay,
and they're part of the player. They're
part of this too. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what makes me so angry. It's just like
they feel like they're not part of it, but they were. But they claim they took no part in it.
Okay, that may be, but it's just still. I wish I would get a call from Prodigy to come and work on that show. I would love to.
Okay. Well, we'll see. It's probably, we'll see if it happens. Now, so getting back to the recording session.
Yeah.
Did you have a chance to improvise at all?
Yes.
Right off. Oh, okay.
Oh my God. See, we can never improvise on regular Trek. It's to the letter. You do not change a darn thing. If you wanted to change even one word, you had to call and get authorization, and oftentimes that was denied. So, the chance to be able to improvise. Oh my gosh, yes. I was able to throw some stuff in there that.
Do you remember what from the?
It's been so long since the recording session. I don't even know. It's during that time when a bunch of Kims are speaking. So there's
like a throwaway line in there which I love, which is, "What did you guys do with your Tuvix?"
Yeah, I can't remember if that was scripted or not. I'll have to look. But
okay. I
did get a chance to throw. They said, okay, we've done the lines already as scripted. Now just throw in some other random lines, that you think Harry would say. So I did, and I'm sure some of that made it in there too. I just don't know which.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now I know you've been heavily involved into the journey, and I saw you there at the event in Hollywood.
Yes.
Did you learn? I mean, and you've done the whole podcast, but through this new process, have you learned anything new about, and what, something surprising
about the show?
Voyager? Yeah, like oh, I never knew Ron and Brandon were fighting, or was there anything in there that you're like, wow, I didn't know that was happening behind the scenes?
No, I think I knew pretty much everything, although it's funny because I had a conversation. There's a bit of the documentary where you see myself, Lolita Fajo, and you see Brian Fuller, the writer.
Yeah.
And I learned something from him while we were recording that, and sort of when we weren't recording, we were just standing around talking. And he said that I had a recurring character for you on Pushing Daisies that we tried to get a hold of you and couldn't find you. And it's true. I left Hollywood. I quit, basically. I took a long vacation for 14 years. I left from 2005 to 2019. So that was news to me. Even though it's not Trek, I was like, what? I could have done that? Because I love that show. It's a great show.
Right.
Yeah.
So if this is your last, do you think that this is your last Star Trek, perhaps? And if so, how do you feel about that?
If it is my last Star Trek, I'll be very sad. I would love to be able to reappear in something else. At one point I was espousing the idea that there should be a show with Harry Kim and Jake Sisko, basically as Section 31 partners, agents, and then they actually threw that into the comics. So in the Trek comic books world, Harry Kim is Section 31 agent. I'm like, what the heck? You took my idea and you threw it in the comic. You didn't put it in live action, but that's fine.
Well, if Terry ever gets to make Legacy, there's no doubt that there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
They are making the Academy show with your old co-star. What's your pitch for hologram Kim showing up in the 32nd century?
Yeah. I just that Harry was so integral to the Voyager crew that he knows more than anyone else. And so that's why he needs to be Admiral Kim hologram or something like that. 1,000 years from now. That's my pitch.
I think we're out of time. It's so great to see you, Garrett, and
Tony,
love the podcast, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Tony. Thanks for being here today.
That was a very fun interview, Tony, even though I did it. No, that was a very fun interview. And it's interesting to think that, the different shows are going back and forth on using Garrett. Well, poor Garrett. It's just like, just somebody actually call me.
Right.
So
it's interesting. I mean, he used the word depressed and angry. I mean, he was very honest about it. But I could see why he would have been when he was said, we need you for a fitting. And then, oh, sorry, you've been written out.
That's upsetting. And I've always, one of the things I like about him is that he's always honest about his feelings, which I appreciate. But no, and that even Jerry Ryan was like, yeah, I saw you in the script and then you weren't there anymore because they're buddies. It
feels like he needs to have a chat with the Hagemans. He feels like they were, when we had Aaron on, the indication I got is that they didn't say, we want to use Garrett, you can't have him. That someone else above them said, Prodigy gets to play with the Voyager characters, so you can't have them, Picard. But then they got Tuvok. I know. None of this really makes any sense, to be honest. I think there's more to it.
There has to be more than just a misunderstanding. There has to be something else.
Yes. Well, maybe someday we'll get the full story. But it was nice to hear from that. I also enjoyed some of the behind the scenes. Like how it was in the script, they wrote him out. Each character had an actual name, including Two Pips Kim. That was what he was written in the script.
Yeah, I like that. And I remember it was an interview with Mike, and I'm like, did I do that? No, somebody else did it. But where he talked about how much fun Garrett was in the booth.
Yeah, he did say he improvised, but I don't know if that made it in or not, but he certainly had a lot of fun with the character, and he's ready for more, even though this could be the last time. But if it were, it was good, and there's more to it, obviously.
And at least they made up for it by having a whole bunch of Harry Kims.
Right.
That's what I felt like. That was the nice payoff to all of the nonsense that went on where he didn't get to be in stuff, is now you get to have like 15 of you.
Right. All right. Well, that's it for the penultimate episode. Next week, we'll be talking to the season finale, and we'll be talking to Mike McMahon.
All right. See you then.
Series finale. Oh, my God.
Series finale. Boo.
Boo. Goodbye.